So everyone will be familiar with trauma. So when people break bones and sprain ankles and so on. Major trauma occurs when people are either so badly injured that they injure several different parts of the body at the same time. So it could be a head injury as well as a broken leg, or are very, very badly injured to one part of the body. So for instance, an open fracture. An open fracture is where the broken bone actually comes out through the skin, and that's a major problem, as you can imagine, for the patients. Until around 4 or 5 years ago, if you were very badly injured, you were still taken to your nearest hospital by the ambulance service, and that hospital may or may not have all the facilities that are required to look after patients with these very serious injuries or combinations of injuries. However, in 2014, the Major Trauma Network in the UK was launched and then spread around the rest of England fairly quickly. And that system really quite revolutionised the way we look after patients with these most severe injuries. The patients, rather than being taken to the nearest hospital, would be taken to the hospital that was closest that could provide all the care that they needed. And this care was arranged in networks around the country with major trauma centres with all the facilities surrounded by trauma units which would have some of the facilities as well as the local emergency departments. And that system has really changed, well, revolutionised, as I say, the way that we deal with patients with the most serious injuries. And it's led to quite a reduction in the number of people dying from these injuries, around 1,600 lives saved, we believe, since the network came into existence, and about a 25% chance of you surviving the most serious injuries. So a big success story in terms of the clinical effectiveness of this new network system. Initially, when the major trauma networks were set up, the emphasis, quite rightly, was on improving the care for the patients. And although research was considered to be important, it wasn't initially included in the specification for the major trauma networks. So although the networks were encouraged to involve themselves in research, it wasn't a requirement of those networks. However, as the network has matured, there's been more and more emphasis on research. That is clinical effectiveness and cost effectiveness research, really working out which treatments work best for what patients and which are the best value for the NHS to fund. We've had some big success stories of late with multi-centre clinical trials being run embedded within the major trauma network. So why is this important? Well, it's really about concentrating resources and expertise in particular areas. So if you have a relatively rare injury or group of injuries, and those patients are dispersed across 200 hospitals in the NHS, it's very difficult to recruit them all into clinical trials or even offer them the opportunity to take part in clinical trials. Whereas if the patients are concentrated in the 22 adult major trauma centres, then it becomes much easier to actually run large-scale trials of relatively rare conditions like major trauma. And that's been really what's changed over the last 5 years since the Major Trauma Network came into existence. So now that the Major Trauma Network specification, the requirements of all of the hospitals in the network include taking part in multi-centre research, we have the capability to do more and more research which will hopefully change and improve the care of patients with these most serious injuries. What we're also very interested in doing is moving away from just the very immediate care in the hospital, looking at care before the patients arrive. So the ambulance services around the country have been uniformly successful in developing their research capability to bring new and improved treatments right to the front line. So at the roadside, can we improve the care for patients? And then at the other end of the patient's journey, there's the rehabilitation. So the major trauma networks, by concentrating expertise in rehabilitation in a smaller number of hospitals, we are able to run some fairly complicated rehabilitation studies to try and improve the longer term outcomes for patients, to get them back to work quicker and to get them back to their families and back involved in their social lives.